From time to time we hear of unexplainable events, mysterious creatures and circumstances that are just bizarre. We will never solve all the mysteries out there. Not only will many historical enigmas remain unsolved, but many more will arise in the future. So in this list we count down 5 bizarre and strange mysteries. Mary Celeste was an American merchant brigantine, discovered adrift and deserted in the Atlantic Ocean off the Azores Island on December 5, 1872. The Canadian ship the Gracia found her in a dishevelled but seaworthy condition, under partial sail and with her lifeboat missing. The last entry in her log was dated 10 days earlier. She had left New York City for Genoa on November 7th, and on discovery was still amply provisioned. Her cargo of alcohol was intact and the captain's and crew's personal belongings were undisturbed. None of those who had been on board were ever seen or heard from again. Mary Celeste was built in Spencer's Island, Nova Scotia, and launched under British registration as Amazon in 1861. She transferred to American ownership and registration in 1868, when she acquired her new name and thereafter sailed uneventfully until her 1872 voyage. At the salvage hearings in Gibraltar following her recovery, the court's officers considered various possibilities of foul play, including mutiny by Mary Celeste's crew, piracy by the De Gracia crew or others, and conspiracy to carry out insurance or salvage fraud. No convincing evidence supported these theories, but unresolved suspicions led to a relatively low salvage award. The inconclusive nature of the hearings helped to foster continued speculation as to the nature of the mystery, and the story has repeatedly been complicated by false detail and fantasy. Hypotheses that have been advanced include the effects on the crew of alcohol fumes rising from the cargo, seaquakes, waterspout, attacks by giant squid, and paranormal intervention. After the Gibraltar hearings, Mary Celeste continued in service under new owners. In 1885, her captain deliberately wrecked her off the coast of Haiti as part of an attempted insurance fraud. The story of her 1872 abandonment has been recounted and dramatised many times in documentaries, novels, plays and films, and the name of the ship has become a byword for unexplained desertion. On June 24, 1947, Kenneth Arnold was flying to Yakima, Washington on a business trip. He made a brief detour after learning of a $5,000 reward for the discovery of a US Marine Corps C-46 transport airplane that had crashed near Mount Rainier. The skies were completely clear and there was a mild wind. A few minutes before 3 PM at about 9,200 feet in altitude and near Mineral, Washington, he gave up his search and started heading eastwards towards Yakima. He saw a bright flashing light similar to sunlight reflecting from a mirror. Afraid he might be dangerously close to another aircraft, Arnold scanned the skies around him, but all he could see was a DC-4 to his left and behind him about 15 miles away. About 30 seconds after seeing the flash of light, Arnold saw a series of bright flashes in the distance to his left, or north of Mount Rainier, which was then 20 to 25 miles away. He thought they might be reflections on his airplane's window, but a few quick tests rocking his airplane from side to side, removing his glasses, later rolling down his side window ruled this out. The reflections came from flying objects. They flew in a long chain and Arnold for a moment considered they might be a flock of geese, but quickly ruled this out for a number of reasons, including the altitude, bright glint and obviously very fast speed. He then thought they might be a new type of jet and started looking for a tail and was surprised that he couldn't find any. They quickly approached Rainier and then passed in front, usually appearing dark in profile against the bright white snowfield covering Rainier, but occasionally still giving off bright light flashes as they flipped around erratically. Sometimes he said he could see them on edge, when they seemed so thin and flat they were practically invisible. Several years later, Arnold would state he likened their movement to saucers skipping on water, without comparing their actual shape to saucers, but initial quotes from him do indeed have him comparing the shape to a saucer, disc or half moon. At one point Arnold said they flew behind a sub-peak of Rainier and briefly disappeared. Knowing his position and the position of the sub-peak, Arnold placed their distance as they flew past Rainier at about 23 miles. Arnold estimated their angular size as slightly smaller than a DC-4, about the width between the outer engines, which is around 60 feet. Arnold also said he realised that the objects would have to be quite large to see any detail at that distance, and later, after comparing notes with a United Airlines crew that had a similar sighting 10 days later, placed the absolute size as larger than a DC-4 airliner or greater than 100 feet in length. Army Air Force would later estimate 140 to 280 feet, based on analysis of human visual acuity and other sighting details. Arnold said the objects were grouped together, though moving on a more or less level horizontal plane. Arnold said the objects weaved from side to side, darting through the valleys and around the smaller mountain peaks. They would occasionally flip or bank on their edges in unison as they turned or maneuvered, causing bright flashes of light. The encounter gave him an eerie feeling, but Arnold suspected he'd seen test flights of a new US military aircraft. As the objects passed Mount Rainier, Arnold turned his plane southward on a more or less parallel course. It was at this point that he opened his side window and began observing the objects, unobstructed by any glass that might have produced reflections. The objects did not disappear and they continued to move very rapidly southward, continuously moving forward of his position. Curious about their speed, he began to time their rate of passage. He said they moved from Mount Rainier to Mount Adams where they had faded from view, a distance of about 50 miles in 1 minute and 42 seconds, according to the clock on his instrumental panel. When he later had the time to do the calculation, the speed was over 1,700 miles per hour. This was 3 times faster than any manned aircraft in 1947. It was this supersonic speed in addition to the unusual saucer description that seemed to capture people's attention. In 2012, the skeleton of the last Plantagenet King of England, Richard III, was unearthed from beneath a council car park on the site of Greyfriars in Leicester city centre. The dig that unearthed his remains was instigated by Philippa Langley of the Richard III Society as a direct result of a strange feeling she had when visiting the site. This apparent example of psychic archaeology is not the only mystery that surrounds Richard's life and death. His precise role in the fate of his 2 nephews, popularly known as the Princes in the Tower, remains a subject of enduring mystery. The 12-year-old Edward and his 9-year-old brother, Richard of Shrewsbury, the sons of King Edward IV, were lodged in the Tower of London by their uncle Richard at the time of their disappearance in 1483. No one knows exactly what happened to them, but a box containing 2 small human skeletons was found in the White Tower in the 17th century, and at the time was widely believed to be the remains of the princes. The state of West Virginia has had its fair share of strange and often inexplicable events, but perhaps the strangest is the arrival of the creature known as the Mothman, who changed the sleepy little town of Point Pleasant forever when it swooped in one cold autumn night in 1966. On November 12, 1966, 5 men who were digging at a grave at a cemetery claimed to see a man-like figure fly low from the trees over their heads. This is often identified as the first known sighting of what became known as the Mothman. Shortly after, on November 15, 1966, 2 young couples from Point Pleasant, Roger and Linda and Steve and Mary, told police they saw a large white creature whose eyes glowed red when the car headlights picked it up. They described it as a large flying man with 10-foot wings, who followed their car while they were driving in an area outside of town known as the TNT area, the site of a former World War II weapon plant. During the next few days, other people reported similar sightings. 2 firemen who sighted it said it was a large bird with red eyes. Mason County Sheriff George Johnson commented that he believed the sightings were due to an unusually large heron. Neil Partridge told Johnson that when he aimed a flashlight at a creature in a nearby field, its eyes glowed like bicycle reflectors, and blamed buzzing noises from his television set and the disappearance of his German Shepherd dog on the creature. After the December 15, 1967 collapse of the Silver Bridge and the death of 46 people, the incident gave rise to the legend and connected the Mothman sightings to the bridge collapse. Some ufologists, paranormal authors and cryptozoologists claim that Mothman was an alien, a supernatural manifestation or a previously unknown species of animal. Wildlife biologist Dr. Robert L. Smith at West Virginia University told reporters that descriptions and sightings all fit the sandhill crane, a large African crane almost as high as a man with a 7-foot wingspan featuring circles of reddish colouring around the eyes. It's been suggested that the bird may have wandered out of its migration route. This particular crane was not recognised at first because it was not native to this region. The Clapham Wood Mystery is the name given to a collection of unusual events which are associated with the Clapham Woods, West Sussex, England, resulting in the area developing its own lore in popular culture. Events have included reports of people making unusual sights or experiencing unusual phenomena, and of family pets disappearing or sickening. There have also been several human deaths associated with this location. Since the 1960s, the area has experienced a rash of UFO sightings. Reports of people experiencing nausea or the sensation of being pushed by unseen forces, or of witnessing patches of strange grey mist developing suddenly on pathways through the woods. Some people have also reported a strong sense of being followed. Studies with a Geiger counter have revealed slightly elevated levels of background radiation in the area, which is surprising since the area is situated on chalk, which is normally low in radiation. Early photographs of the wood appear to show a large crater or depression somewhere in the wood, though now the area is highly wooded and difficult to search. 4 deaths have occurred either in or close to the woods and have since become a part of the lore surrounding it. The first death was in June 1972, when police officer Peter Goldsmith disappeared while hiking in the region. His body was discovered 6 months later. The second death was that of Leon Foster, whose body was discovered in August 1975. He'd been missing for 3 weeks. The third death was of Reverend Harry Neil Snelling, the former vicar of Clapham. He disappeared in October 1978 and his body was not found until 3 years later. English coroners ruled open verdicts in all 3 cases. So that was 5 strange and bizarre mysteries. Thanks for watching and don't forget to subscribe for more countdown videos.